Nathan kissed Rose passionately on the lips, on the cheeks, on the eyes. Nathan stood up, still holding Rose tightly. She wanted to resist, but her limbs were weak. She wanted to let go of Nathan, but his arms were stiff around Nathan's stomach, and she also clumsily stood with Nathan. At this moment, Nathan was very bold. Desire and alcohol made Nathan forget everything. Nathan turned Rose around, pressed her back against him, held Rose's ivory arms tightly, and bent down to lightly bite the white nape of her neck, making Rose shrink. Hello everyone, welcome to our channel, where we will bring you the most interesting and dramatic stories in life. It will take the audience from one surprise to another. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any episodes. In today's video, we will bring you the story, The Secretary. Please follow along. Rose and I had been married for perhaps 3 years, the result of an arrangement between my mother and Rose's mother. At that time, I was nothing more than a country boy, but I always wore a face as dignified as a conservative scholar, perhaps due to the influence of my family and the influence of classical education from previous generations. Rose was the same. She was a teacher, the only daughter of a widow. Her mother stayed single to worship her husband and raise her children, so she was strongly influenced by the faithful virtue of the woman Nathan. In addition to many years of studying at the teacher training college, she learned to bury her thoughts in her soul like a true monk. Outsiders often admired an ideal family, a happy home. The house was as peaceful as a painting, but I was fed up with this peaceful life. I preferred to sit with my feet up in the office rather than go home. I liked to sleep alone. Sometimes I also had sex with Rose, but it was reluctant because she was too serious. She seemed to think that sex was a bad or sinful thing, so I never saw her respond. Gradually, Rose and I lived together like two people who had to pay their debts to life. I went to the office today to test the new machines. I probably won't be back until morning. Rose, little girl, she was always so obedient. She never wondered where her husband went. Then I will go to the market on Sunday. I will take the car to be repaired tomorrow weekend. What's wrong with the car? Why don't you bring it over for Uncle Nathan to look at? I'm afraid of bothering Nathan on his day off. It's not that I'm afraid of spending money, but Nathan's fix makes me feel more secure. Let me call Nathan. Nathan is a friend who lives nearby. Nathan is young, more playful than studious, but has many abilities and is very knowledgeable in psychology. Nathan also knows how to read horoscopes and physiognomy, so he has had countless girlfriends. Nathan once read my horoscope and said, "Your destiny has Dominic Dieu, so your married life is very strange. You will only stop being tormented by him after 40. Rose laughed heartily at Nathan's prediction, but I knew Nathan was right because I was miserable and tormented with my sex life without finding a way out. All because of my moral face. I'm not saying I'm hypocritical, but the restrictive life of etiquette makes my mind always struggle. Consider every gesture, every action. Even though no one criticizes me, I make myself suffer. Nathan came home while Rose was cooking dinner. Why is Dominic working on weekends? I don't know. He has to test some machines, so he seems busy all week. What happened to your car, Rose? I don't know either, but today the engine kept turning off 2 or 3 times on the way home. Nathan, have dinner with me first, then do it, Nathan. Let me fix it first, and then eat. After saying that, Nathan went out to the garage to fix it. Okay, I'll go help Nathan when I'm ready. When Rose entered the garage, Nathan was lying on his back under the car, half of his body outside, his legs spread wide. Rose's face suddenly turned red when she saw the bulge in Nathan's tight jeans. She awkwardly said vaguely, as if to cover up her guilty eyes, "Nathan, do you need help with anything?" "Please get me the key." Nathan reached out, accidentally holding Rose's hand, making Rose jump. No strange man had ever held Rose's hand before. Dominic rarely held her hand either. Dominic was very reserved even with his wife, especially in public. Rose was still shocked and didn't know how to react when Nathan teased her again. "How many years have you been married, Rose? Why do your hands tremble like a girl's when you touch them? Come on, go set the table. I'm almost done." Rose hurried into the house, her hands still burning from the strange feeling. After eating, Nathan urged Rose, "Now you go test drive and then I'll go home." "Why are you going home so soon? Where are you going?" "No, I'm a monk this week." "Nathan the cuckoo." Everything seemed to have returned to normal in Rose's mind. She happily asked Nathan from the other day, "Nathan, why didn't you say anything when you read my horoscope? Is there something wrong with me?" "Not bad, but I'm not sure, so I don't dare say." "Just say it. Right or wrong doesn't matter to me." Nathan returned to his joking nature, making Rose even more curious to know. "It is better to listen and wash your ears than to keep it all to yourself." "I begged you, tell me, Nathan." Nathan hesitated and looked straight into Rose's eyes. Nathan suddenly felt a little flustered. Rose is so beautiful. Rose felt really excited. All girls were like that, but she pretended to be insincere. "Nathan is beating the village drum, right? Well, if Nathan doesn't want to talk, then fine. I won't force Nathan anymore. Nathan, do you want a beer? I'll get it for you. Drink it, Nathan. It's been too long." "I never refuse that, but I'm telling you, if the beer goes in and the words come out, don't blame me. I'm starting to be as reserved as Dominic." "It's like this is your first time drinking here." "Not the first time, but it's the first time without Dominic drinking with me." "Oh, Rose, you and your husband live like two old people. I think living like that is so miserable." "I didn't want that. It's because Dominic is too strict." "Why don't you get some kids for fun, Rose?" "I really want to, but I don't know why." "Have you and Dominic been to the doctor yet?" "Dominic doesn't like to tell other people about his marital affairs." "Nathan." Half a bottle of beer had gone down. Nathan's voice seemed to be more aggressive. "Try some beer, Rose. Drinking alone is so boring." "I won't tell Dominic. Are you scared?" Nathan said as he poured out a small glass. Rose suddenly had the idea of letting Nathan drink more and then asking about fortune-telling. Who knows, Nathan might blurt it out. Thinking so, Rose reached for the beer cup, closed her eyes and drank it all. "If you want to drink, then drink. I've tried it too." In less than 2 minutes, Rose's face was red. She leaned back in her chair and looked out the window, her lips plumped up seductively under the light. Nathan suddenly blurted out, "Rose is so beautiful, yet Dominic works all day." Nathan's words made Rose suddenly feel a pang in her heart. "Are you and Dominic angry with each other, Rose?" "No, Nathan." "So if you have something sad to say, just tell me and it will make you feel better. If you keep it inside, you will wither away." "It's nothing. I just find life so boring." Nathan watched TV. "I think there's soccer on." "I don't bet on football, so why am I so into it?" Without waiting for Nathan to finish, Rose quietly went into the living room and turned on the TV, causing Nathan to stand up. "I'm going home, Rose." "Nathan, stay a little longer, Nathan. What else will I do all day?" Nathan didn't answer, just sat quietly at the head of the sofa on this side. Both of them were glued to the TV, seemingly each of them absorbed in their own private thoughts. "Rose is so miserable, Nathan." Nathan stood up and looked at Rose. Rose was so beautiful in contrast to her bare, smooth, round and white arms. Nathan moved closer to Rose, trying to act as nonchalant as possible, put his arm around Rose's shoulder and gently squeezed her shoulder. Don't be sad anymore. Everyone has their own fate. You are also a normal person. You also have demands like everyone else, but Dominic is so cold to you, and you don't know why. Nathan gently tightened his arms and said absent-mindedly, "Maybe it's because Rose doesn't know how to pamper Dominic that he's like that. I'm afraid Dominic will think I'm this or that person. Oh, what's wrong with my husband?" Nathan's hand suddenly let go of Rose's shoulder, carelessly playing with the locks of hair on the nape of her neck, making Rose suddenly feel Nathan's affection. She stood up, went to the cupboard to get another bottle of beer, then returned to her old place, still next to Nathan and perhaps a little closer to Nathan. "Drink this beer and go to Nathan's house. I must be drunk. Sorry, I'm going home now." Rose looked up at Nathan. She felt uneasy. Something made Rose want Nathan not to go home, but she didn't understand why or for what purpose. "Nathan despises you, doesn't he?" "No, sister. You're just human, and I'm not a god. You're just too beautiful." Nathan left the sentence unfinished. Nathan's hand caressed Rose's ear, hugging her tighter, making Rose tremble. The strange feeling mixed with anxiety made Rose's face even more beautiful. She remained still as Nathan's hand caressed her cheek. She breathed harder as Nathan's face moved closer. The faint smell of beer made Rose ecstatic. And then she suddenly leaned against Nathan. Her body was hot as if it was burning through her shirt. Her eyes slowly closed, her lips parted, pink and moist as if expressing the desires she had never fully enjoyed. Nathan suddenly forgot everything, forgot morality, forgot society, forgot Dominic. Before Nathan's eyes now was Rose's passionate face, her red lips and her flushed cheeks. Nathan put both arms around Rose's face, kissing passionately on her trembling lips. Nathan faintly heard Rose's weak voice. "Don't, Nathan." But Nathan clearly felt Rose's arms also hugging Nathan, squeezing Nathan tightly, her soul burning, so strong that Nathan could hear Rose's heartbeat racing. Nathan kissed passionately on Rose's lips, cheeks, and eyes. Nathan stood up, still holding Rose tightly. She wanted to resist, but her limbs were weak. She wanted to let Nathan go, but his arms were stiff around Nathan's stomach, and she also clumsily stood with Nathan. At this moment, Nathan was very bold. Desire and alcohol made Nathan forget everything. Nathan turned Rose around, pressed her back against him, held Rose's ivory arms tightly, and bent down to lightly bite her white nape, making Rose shrink. Rose's mind was now completely numb. She arched her body following the ecstatic feelings. Then Nathan's rough hand slipped into the gap between Rose's sleeves, as if playing with fire. Rose's arms were still hanging limply. Her neck fell on Nathan's shoulder. Her eyes were blurred. She whispered meaningless words in Nathan's ear, as Nathan's hand slipped under her bra, lightly chewing on 2 plump rose peanuts. She closed her eyes and breathed raggedly. She bent down and thrust hard into Nathan. Rose jumped again. She had just touched something hard behind her back. Rose felt the world fly. Morality and Dominic faded away, replaced by an emotion she had never enjoyed before. She put her 2 hands on Nathan's, making Nathan forget that in her arms was just a weak girl. Nathan was playful at the wet golden triangle intersection, looking passionately at Rose's eyes, which were now foolish. Rose was as soft as a clay statue that had not yet dried, allowing Nathan to shape her as he wished. Nathan sat down on the sofa, pulling Rose down with him, sitting on Nathan's lap. She did not resist. Nathan pulled Rose down, and she fell too. Nathan gently pulled one of Rose's legs onto the chair, the other leg still hanging limply on the floor. Nathan lifted Rose's shirt down, unfastened her slender belt, and unbuttoned it. Rose arched her body like an obedient servant, so Nathan could pull her pants down. Rose was like a wet cat, scratching at her mismatched clothes, further enhancing the charm of a woman who had longed for too long. Rose can't take it anymore. Nathan. Suddenly Nathan stood up with all his strength. Nathan softly said, "Please forgive me." Rose was still intoxicated with Dominic's love. The sound of the door closing woke her up. The emptiness around her brought Rose back to reality, and the feeling of unfinished business made Rose realize what had happened. Rose returned to the gentle nature of a pious woman to feel the guilt she had just committed. Tears of repentance flowed down, guilt weighed heavily. Rose buried her face in her hands and sobbed out loud. I was livid with anger. I heard it all. A choking jealousy welled up in my throat, boiling in my blood. But I didn't know what to do, how to behave. A divorce like that was too scandalous for me. I couldn't turn a blind eye to it. I was like a madman at that moment. The computer screen was still dancing with the image of Rose making love, like on cloud 9. On the other side of Dominic's office, he now put both feet up on the table, leaned back in his chair, clasped his hands together to block the dim light in the office reflected on the two-way glass frame. The silhouettes of female employees working hard on the keyboard or chatting on the phone made me suddenly hate those makeup-covered faces. I sat behind the large wooden desk, my eyes now fixed on the documents in my hands. But my mind was completely absorbed in the presence of Julia, the young secretary with a slender face and eyes that shone with a sharp, demanding look. "Sir, I have finished typing the draft. Please review it with Mr. Dominic. Next week, the Economic Department wants to know the results of the Research Department to present the advertising plan. You will have to go to a meeting in Hawaii. I have prepared the plane ticket and hotel." The secretary was polite as usual, but today I found her so attractive. Her slender legs were inviting, her blonde hair was flowing, and her massive undulating hills seemed ready to swallow anyone up. I still did not answer, staring at the girl's body. She did not seem surprised, because she had once told me she wanted to try Asian men, and once she had distantly blamed me. "If you were my wife, you would have left me a long time ago, because what kind of man has such weak desires?" Her sarcasm and the situation made me feel that morality was just a thin cloth covering the unimaginable truths in people. I kicked the edge of the table. The chair rolled quickly towards the door, twisted the lock diagonally, and rolled the chair close to the secretary. Her blue eyes still showed no surprise or fear. The lips painted, Rose still smiled charmingly. I was a misogynist at that moment, so without any hesitation, I reached into the secretary's short skirt, my eyes still looking at her with hatred, filled with cruel thoughts. I looked up into Julia's deep eyes. Both of us seemed to sink into a moment of silence. I said nothing, just silently stood up from the table and walked towards her. In my hidden gallery suit, every step I took exuded authority and confidence. But as I stood before Julia, there was a fire burning in my eyes, a desire I tried to conceal. "Mr. Dominic." Julia spoke softly, but her voice had become vague, as if drawn into the attraction of the man before her. Without waiting another second, I gently but decisively placed my hand on Julia's shoulder, pulling her closer. The closeness between the two of us immediately created a stuffy, yet tense atmosphere. Julia felt my warm breath on her neck. Her eyes seemed to wake up, feeling as if all thoughts about work, about her position, had disappeared into a dream. "You know..." My voice was deep. Julia's fingers ran lightly. Her breathing became rapid. She knew what was happening, and she also knew that she would not be able to stop any more. The feeling of my strong hands on her waist, creating a boundary between work and any personal feelings gradually being erased. I leaned down, my lips stopping right at her ear, whispering in a confession that only the two of them would know. "I can't stop thinking about you, Julia." At that moment, A storm of emotions descended upon me. Julia looked up at me, her eyes shining like 1,000 stars. She couldn't hold back anymore. She wrapped her arms around my neck, pulling me closer, feeling the rhythmic heartbeat of both of us. Our lips met in a passionate kiss, as if all the pent-up desires had been released. At this moment, the room became cramped and hot. I gently pushed her back. Her back hit the large wooden table. The documents fell to the floor, but no one cared. My hand caressed her face, feeling every line. My eyes still did not leave her, as if wanting to preserve these moments. "Julia, you know, everything has changed since you came to work here," I whispered, my arms tightening around her waist, pulling her into my embrace. "I can't stop thinking about you every day." Julia smiled softly, her eyes flickering to mine, her whole body burning with unspeakable tension. "I know how you feel, right?" I didn't say another word. Instead, I leaned down. My lips sought her neck, leaving soft, gentle kisses that seemed to confirm that this moment would last forever. In the silence of the vast office space, but inside there is the fusion of two souls, caught in the gentle waves of uncontrollable emotions. The feeling between right and wrong, between work and personal feelings, all are left behind, giving way to a growing thirst, burning and unstoppable. I whispered softly in her ear, "I want you." My words were like an irresistible command, and Julia, with a broken heart, could only nod in agreement, completely caught up in the emotions we had created in that brief moment. I pulled Julia closer, feeling her sudden breaths in my ear. The room felt cramped with the hot air of desire. I nudged her against the edge of the table, my hands beginning to dream softly over her back, my fingers lightly brushing her delicate skin, her fabric. Julia looked up at me, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of uncertainty and excitement. This was the moment she had dreamed of, but never imagined it would come so soon. Her arms wrapped around my shoulders, pulling me closer, not losing any of her attraction. She herself couldn't refuse this man, whom she had always respected, but who was now the source of her wild emotions. I lowered myself, finding her lips in a passionate kiss. Julia responded, her breathing rapid as if trying to suck every bit of air around her. The stress of work, the pressure of everyday life, all seemed to melt away before the heat spreading through her body. It was just the two of them in this moment, completely ignoring all norms. Between long, passionate kisses, I whispered into her ear, my hot breath making her melt. "Do you know how much I wanted you from the first time we met?" Julia couldn't speak. She could only nod slightly, her lips parted, but her voice was caught in the emotion. She had known for a long time that my special attention to her was more than just work. The meaningful glances, the unintentional but meaningful touches, and the anxious moments between us, all led to this moment. I pulled her closer to me, my arms tightening, my every breath matching the empty beat of our hearts. Julia leaned back on the desk, feeling the coldness of the tabletop, but her heart was hotter than ever. Her eyes were closed, taking in each moment of intimacy between the two of them becoming clearer. I was careful but also tired. I let myself indulge in this moment, when all reason was overwhelmed by wild emotions. My lips searched Julia's neck, my hands searched everywhere, the most primitive, but as if I had found the secret palace. I couldn't stop. I spoke in a deep, longing voice. The kiss between Julia and I became deeper and more intense, as if everything we had suppressed for so long was finally released. My lips took over, moving with desire and relentlessness, while Julia responded with gentleness mixed with passion. Our bodies were so close that it felt like the entire office space was melting with the explosion of emotions. I let my hand slide down her back to her waist, slowly caressing her soft curves. The feeling of intimacy sent Julia into a new emotional zone, a place where all worries and boundaries were erased. Her eyes closed, completely surrendering to what was happening. "Julia," I whispered, my voice hoarse, passionate and determined. "I can't wait any longer." She said nothing, just nodded slightly, her breathing becoming more and more rapid with my intensity. Passion overwhelmed her rational thoughts. My kisses moved from her lips to her neck, leaving a tingling sensation throughout her body. My hands slowly pulled her dress up, my fingers sliding across her soft skin, feeling her shiver in response. The office space became quiet, except for the sound of panting and the rubbing of fabric. I lifted her face with my hands, looking deep into her eyes, as if to make sure she felt the same. "You know we can't go back after this, right?" I asked. Her eyes were still bright with desire, but there was a seriousness hidden beneath them. Julia nodded slowly. She knew that, but right now all she wanted was me, the feeling of being able to live out her desires, no matter what tomorrow brought. I didn't hesitate any longer. I leaned down, my lips once again finding hers with an uncontrollable passion. Boundaries, rules, and limits seemed to be broken, and in that moment the two of us were left with only each other. I kept my eyes on Julia, the smile in her blue eyes teasing me even more. I used all 3 fingers to insert it there. "Do it like me." The short but seductive command made me forget all my hatred. I imitated her every instruction, and for the first time I burned myself out like that. We did it right in my office. Maybe it was because I was no longer shy that I was so comfortable, or maybe it was because her skills were so good that I liked it. "I thought you were frigid. I felt sorry for your wife. But now I know. Please return you to your family. What happened today was just a sweet dream, wasn't it?" The secretary left. I sat motionless, thinking about what had happened. 1,000 questions were running through my head. 1,000 conflicting thoughts were fighting inside me. Through the two-way glass, I did not see the secretaries working on the main floor as usual. I saw only a group of ordinary creatures called by different names. My face was reflected, but I saw that it was just another creature of a different species. Nothing more, nothing less. I remembered Elena, the wife of a doctor I knew. Before Elena left her husband, I had the opportunity to meet Elena at her husband's house. Elena was passionate about science and devoted to her career, so she often stayed home alone or wandered around shopping alone. That day, Elena wore a thin shirt to meet me. The bra was visible through the fabric, causing me to have many dark thoughts. I did not dare to do it with Elena in real life, but that night I hugged Elena passionately in my sleep. She lamented her lonely fate, and I also comforted her, although I myself did not understand what Elena's loneliness was. When I returned, I saw Elena looking at me with a very affectionate gaze. Now I can say for sure that it was the gaze of a woman who longed for that. Elena gave up all her career and fame to follow a man who was far inferior to my friend in every field. But perhaps it was an invitation to happiness, a happiness in which sex and love must be evenly mixed. If there is only holy love, one day it will fly high to the throne of love to return to humans the wildness of instinct. Oh, the truth of happiness is so simple. Why did I only realize it today? Poor Rose, poor me. The shell of morality and propriety almost destroyed my family's happiness. I suddenly felt that Rose had done nothing wrong, and Nathan had done nothing wrong. They had just reacted according to their normal instincts. Maybe Nathan and Rose were more moral than me, because at least they had stopped at the last step. I drove home in a hurry, rushed up to her room. Rose hugged her tightly and kissed her passionately. Rose hadn't slept yet. She was still awake and worried. She had tried to arrange her ideas to tell Dominic the truth. Then she came out, seeing my strange attitude, Rose opened her eyes wide in surprise. Oh my God, how lovely her eyes were. Rose's mouth moved before she could say anything. I had already kissed her dreamy lips harshly, I whispered, repeating the secretary's words. Kiss me like I kiss you. And then the lesson in the office was repeated. I kissed her so hard that Rose struggled with suffocation. She tried to hold back the tickling. I shocked Rose to sit up, whispered words of love in her ear, while my hand caressed Rose with my usual habit. She closed her eyes and took mine in. I quickly grabbed Rose's hand and squeezed it hard, causing Rose to open her eyes in surprise. Can you forget the pious girl you were and live with your feelings, Rose? Rose's heart was small. Tears welled up in her eyes. Suddenly, a reckless thought came to her mind. Forget it. What must come, will come. Thinking like that, she closed her eyes to let the tears flow quickly, then hugged her husband's neck and kissed him back passionately. The feeling of fear disappeared, replaced by a woman's instinct. The fire that had just ignited in the afternoon suddenly flared up in Rose. Dominic's hand clumsily stroked Rose's arm, but she felt goosebumps spreading along with the heat from Dominic's hand. The hand of the person Julia loved caressed her for the first time, making her feel pleasure, an indescribable feeling. Elena's blood flowed all over her body. With the experience he learned from doing that with the secretary, tonight Dominic really made Rose ecstatic without any regrets. It was truly happiness. Since then, I no longer lingered in the office, and Rose did not like to drive around the city. We hurried home to make love. Everywhere in the house there were traces of the storms of husband and wife. I no longer held back with formal words. Rose was no longer as reserved as before. She demanded when sleeping, she craved when bathing, she wanted when eating. She lived comfortably and innocently with me. Rose was still mine, even though she had shed her moral face. Since then, my married life has been more beautiful than ever. It is true that life must be balanced in sex to be happy, my friends. Thank you, Secretary. Thanks to you, I have regained myself. Our story today will stop here. If you find this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment about your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interesting stories. See you in the next videos. Good luck.